Here's how to make paper baubles with strips of paper. So these are what we're going to make. We need 4 strips of patterned paper and 4 strips of plain paper, or any combination of paper that you choose. So what you will need is 4 strips of patterned paper, 4 strips of plain paper, any combination. These strips are 1.5 centimeters wide and 14 centimeters long, but you can adjust that if you want to change things up according to the size of your paper that you want to use. You'll also need a piece of thread or embroidery cotton to hang the bauble, and you will need 2 brass fasteners. So these, if you haven't used them before, have 2 little sections there that will open out later, but while we're making the bauble we'll keep them closed. So these points aren't very sharp, but be careful with them anyway. Once you've cut your paper out, start off by using just 4 of the strips to begin with. And what I've done to make it easier to thread these onto the paper fastener is I've made a tiny little hole about 1 centimetre in from the end, and in the middle of the strip. You can do this with a pin. If you have a craft knife, then you can very carefully cut a tiny little cross shape in, makes it easier. Or you can just push them straight onto the paper fastener. Just be a little bit more careful when you do that. So we'll start with the 4 pattern strips, pattern side down. This one I punched a hole in with a paper hole punch. If you have one of those, you can do that at each end. So you need a tiny little hole at each end. So I'm going to take the first paper fastener and show you through this one. You're going to thread it onto the paper fastener. So this is the outside of the bauble, and this plain part will be inside. So taking each strip, I'm going to push it down onto the paper fastener. And what we're going to aim for is making a cross shape, and that's just so that the strips are spaced out evenly around the bauble. So pattern side down, thread your first 4 strips on, and we're going to take our second colour, and what we're going to aim to do is put these onto the paper fastener roughly like that. So we're making a star shape, evenly threaded onto the paper fastener. If you thread them on and they're not quite where you want them to be, you can easily adjust them. Oops. Doing this flat just to show you, but you can pick it up and do it in mid-air like this if it's easier. So if they're not quite where you want them to be, you can make little adjustments. Now then, what I'm going to do is a little addition on this one, I think. Just got a little extra spare piece of paper, and I'm going to cut out, just very roughly, a small circle. This is optional. it does make the top of the bauble look a little bit neater when you're finished. So just very carefully cut out a little circle. You can draw around something, but it doesn't have to be exact. Just going to finish the top of the bauble a little bit more neatly there. So we'll take our second paper clip here, and I haven't made a hole in this one, so I'm just going to twizzle that around a little bit so that I can push that on like that. Just stops you seeing all the loose ends. So that's that. Just keep these points together while you're threading things on. If they open out, it's quite tricky to thread everything on. So before we go on to the next step, I'm going to open out the paper fastener. So again, just be a little bit careful when you do that, so you can see it starts to open out like that. Press it down. Don't press it too hard because it will bend all the way in and it'll make your bauble a bit of a funny shape at the bottom. So let's just reorganise these because they've moved a little bit there. Okay, so next step is to start to make the bauble shape. So it's important at this point to use the 4 that you've just threaded on, the last 4. So you're going to lift this up, you're going to pop the fastener through there, and you can do this in any order. You could do this one next or this one, doesn't matter, as long as you thread on the 4 that you've just done. Oops, don't do that. You can take your time. Now then, the next bit is a little bit trickier because you're going to be working inside the bauble. If you have made a tiny little guide hole, it's a little bit easier to do. This one should be around here. So the paper I've used here is double-sided, and the way I've arranged it, I've got alternating patterns showing. You could have the plain side facing out, just you do whatever works for the paper you've got, the paper you'd like to use. If you want to make more of these and you've used your origami paper, you can use magazine pages, you could use old Christmas cards or greetings cards, wrapping paper. That's the finished bauble there. Just show you different sides, and then I'm going to open out the paper fastener inside, and obviously that stops all the strips falling off. Open that one out, arrange them. Just want to try and get a nice even arrangement there of strips. Then you take your little or long piece of embroidery thread. You can do this in any way. I like to do through and through again, so in effect you're making a double knot. And you take that little loop that you end up with like that. And the top, if you're going to mostly see the top, is the one with the little extra circle on. Pop that over the loop and pull it tight. You can snip that little bit off if you want to make it neat. And there's your bauble. Show it from the side. So these look lovely hung from the tree or a branch or in a window. And you can experiment with different sizes. This one I showed earlier was made with 10 strips, and as you can see they're a little bit finer. So you might choose to make a very, very delicate one.